Hi ladies, it's Stephanie. I just wanted to show you how I alter a regular sketch with Kiwi Lane templates and how I design my process. So first of all, we have the sketch. This is actually a preview. If you're on my page, this is going to be my group November challenge. So as you can see, there's some circles, there's a little ribbon, but primarily just straight edges and circles. So this is not a Kiwi Lane specific sketch. This is just a regular scrapbook sketch idea. Sorry, I'm gonna try to prop this up a little bit better, just so that you guys can see the sketch. I have a limited space to work with here because my craft table right now is also my home office. Since the end of March, I've been working from home, like a lot of the country, I think. So my work stuff is taking up about 2/3 of my normal craft space. So we're adapting. So the vision I have for this sketch is that along the bottom and maybe the top, instead of just straight rectangles, we're going to add a fun border to that, and maybe some flowers or hexagons or some other shapes in lieu of the circles, or at least some of them. So for fun borders, I've grabbed Eli Avenue. I'm going to be using 2A 2B and 3A 3B. If you'll notice, one is kind of curvy with just a little spike in it, and the other has a little bit more dimension but still stays kind of flatter, where this is a little higher at one end and lower at the other. So I feel like that's going to give me some contrast. I think you'll see my vision soon. I've grabbed a few sizes of my rings for these doodle circles in the background. We're going with a fall theme. So I've grabbed some different sunflowers out of Nature, Tiny Nature, 5 and 5T, and then these were from my September club kit, along with the stem that goes with those. And then in lieu of this small bracket or tab up here, and then there's a couple of tags on the edge, I've grabbed both a couple of tag shapes out of Tags and Tiny Charmed. Sorry, those are tiny tags set. I've also grabbed a few different angled cuts. I may or may not use this as a photo corner on one of my pictures, or I can use any of these different angles to cut in the edges of this bracket into just a rectangular strip. So I wanted to have a few options there because I'm not sure exactly how big that piece of paper is going to be yet, or what kind of angle I'm going to want in that banner. And then I've grabbed some brackets and tabs and a little caption bubble to see what I want to do where this tab is. Again, it may depend on the sizes I'm playing with. The other thing I should grab out that I don't have out yet is my photo sets. So I'm going to grab those out really quick because we're just going to kind of lay out placeholders for our photos. I don't have pictures printed right now, and not yet sure exactly what I'm going to do with this one. But I was inspired to do something fall themed despite the snow here this morning. I'm using my Echo Park kit, A Perfect Autumn. So this kit, just kind of showing you what some of the papers and things look like. As you'll notice, there are duplicates of these. So I'm not sure if this one came with duplicates or if I purchased 2 of them, so I would have duplicates. But rather than use these as the background sheet, because with the exception of this yellow, most of them are pretty busy, and I didn't have 2 of that, I decided to go with the colors in the kit and see if I had like the red or the green for the background. So we're going to go with the green background. As you can see, I just pulled a couple pieces of solid cardstock from my stash that match that green that's in some of the patterns. So to get started, I think most of you have used the templates before, but if you haven't, there's a side A and a side B. So you can see on here we've got Eli Avenue 2A and 2B. They fit together. So if you bring A on one page and B on the next, you can see your design kind of flows right from one to the other. There's always one side that matches up. If you try to put it the other way, it usually will not quite match up. So something to be aware of. If you're running it from one page to the other and you want it to flow, use the A on the left page and the B on the right page. The other option is, in a normal layout, if you're playing on your own, you could bring one up and bring one over here. You could have them on the bottom and the top. You could even put them in the same layout and space them out, or put them back to back, and optional if you wanted to put like a little strip in the middle. See where that's doubled up? You could put a little strip or some washi tape or a ribbon border or whatever you've got in the middle. So there's lots of different options with these. In this case, because you'll notice these pieces don't come all the way to the side, I'm going to cut them to come across the page, and then I'm probably going to go from there and decide if I want to lop that off or figure out how exactly we want to do that in the middle. I am actually kind of feeling like I want this shape, but maybe I just want the curve there. I don't know yet. So, and then if you're flipping them upside down, again, to bring that continuity across, if you want it to really flow from one page to the other, then you'd use the A over here and the B over here, because you're, kind of flipping that whole thing around. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just going to lay some of this out. We're going to, I'm thinking I actually just want to get the curve on the bottom here. Actually, I lied. I'm sorry. I'm going to put the curve on the top. And I want a little bit more character across the bottom, because if you'll notice in this sketch, a lot of the top is covered by photos or other embellishments, where across the bottom, I think you're really going to see that edge. So I want to use that crisp pattern. So here I'm going to get a little more ebb and flow, or perhaps not, because that edge is going to get kind of cut off. So we're actually going to flip those around. This is part of the fun of playing, and this is why I love the templates, because you can really see how it's going to look before you actually cut anything, because once you cut it, it's a lot harder to undo it and get it fixed. I'm just going to pull out some little magnets I have here to hold these guys still. I'm using a magnet board that's ergonomic, so it's got a slight angle. This is flat, so it both helps show this to you, and it helps me not have to strain quite as much on my neck and my back as I lay this out. So I feel like this is about what we're going to be doing with the borders here, but I'm maybe only going to bring it to about this point and about this point over here. Or maybe I'll bring them all the way across, we'll see. Then we're going to have a strip, and I'm going to use that to just cut that banner. Cut that in a little bit. So I'm actually also going to pull out my strips templates just to see what size that we're going to want for that. I'm thinking like a 2-inch strip. So if we basically do a 2-inch strip and then kind of have it cut in to be like a banner like that. I think that's going to get us a pretty good I don't have a second one of that Elements template because I only have one of each set, and unlike the borders, those do not come with duplicates. What I do have, specific to the Elements set, there is a number 2 and a number 7, and they are both, I believe, the same angle or very close to it. So that's my number 7, and this is my number 2. You see, this is just a skinnier one, but it's kind of that same angle. So that's just going to give us, you know, it's not exact, but it gives us the idea of how that banner is going to look and where we might want to cut this border off. Because we don't want, you know, the edge of that to quite hit the edge of the page. So then the question is, for these big doodle circles, do we put a ring here behind everything and a ring over here behind everything, and this little one down here coming off here? Or, and we may even combine these ideas, the other thought I had, which is why I got out all the sunflowers, is that maybe instead of the circles, because this is a fall themed layout, maybe we'd have a large sunflower peeking up over there, and then a medium-sized one, and a small little one kind of down here. And my thought was, this particular sunflower has a center that comes with it. For the larger sunflowers, I might use something like that in the middle, or I could use a scalloped punch, because I do have some scalloped punches to get a similar center to that in different sizes. You could even do like a hexagon in there. I'm not loving the hexagon, to be honest. Or as a center, I could even use the small sunflower inside the big one. So lots of options, but I want to lay some different things out. I'm not completely against the circles, but I really like the look of the sunflowers for fall. Again, if you look at my papers, I have a lot of leaves, some trees. There's owls, but mostly patterns. So I think the sunflowers could be fun, especially if we use this yellow for the sunflowers and maybe like the brown damask or the red or the orange kind of in the center. I think that could be really fun. So for now, we're going to go with that. I think I'm just going to bring this down a little bit so there's not white space in between. Then we're going to take a look at the tags. This tag has an edge that to me looks a lot like this one, which is tag 7T, tiny tag set. So I was thinking I would stick that there. And I didn't know if I even wanted to use, you know, another tag. I could use a larger one with this flower and a smaller one over here, have something peek up. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to want to do there yet. I could also take one of these flowers and use the stem from the sunflower. I feel like this one is going to be peeking up and we're not going to see the whole flower the way that's behind. Maybe down here, I would just cut the stem off here and have a little bit. Or I might just have the flower stem. I don't know. We'll see how that pulls together. Personally, myself, when I cut photos, I use mostly 4x6 or even slightly smaller. I use a Canon selfie printer, which you can kind of see back here. So a lot of times it leaves a little bit of white edge around. So I use a lot of 4x6 and I use a lot of 3x4, kind of a wallet size. And I'll use these as placeholders. This is probably going to be the size of my photo mat, and my actual photo is going to be a little bit smaller. Probably 1/4 to 1/2 inch smaller all in all. I do use some 4x5s as well. For the purpose of this, I'm thinking maybe we do a couple of 4x4s and some 3x4s. And just because I want to have room to put the pictures on the page, but I don't want things to get too big and out of control. And actually, instead of one of these small picture blocks, thinking up by the sunflower might be a good place for this, I may actually use like a journaling block instead of a photo spot. So let's say we have a photo kind of right there, or maybe we move that up a little so that we can see our whole border underneath. You'll see the banner, you'll see the tag sticking out, and you'll still see a lot of that sunflower. Then maybe I bring in like a 4x5. Thinking that's going to come up a little. And this 4x5 is going to go right about here. And then I'm going to want a journaling area. And this is actually one of my favorite journaling blocks, this shape. So I think I'm going to throw my captions 4, just kind of overlapping the edge of the photo or photo mats right there. I'm kind of liking the way that looks. Hopefully you guys like it too. Then on my other page, to balance that out, I'm thinking maybe we do a 3x4 over here. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. She likes everyone to know that she wants the attention. And it sounds like my husband is in the kitchen, so she is probably hoping that he's going to feed her something, even though it's pretty much her bedtime. So we're going to bring another 4x5 in over here. And even though they're level on this page, because that one is raised up a little, I'm going to just have it kind of come across a little, if that makes sense. Have these two, the bottom edge, not be lined up, because these two, the bottom edge is not lined up. And then that's a little too big. I'm thinking I want another 3x4. I don't know why I don't have more of those out. It's probably my most common size. Thinking maybe we have another 3x4 kind of up here. Maybe it even gets tucked in a little. Or we could... What if we had 2 of them? If we had 2 3x4s kind of peeking out from behind this border, that would let us use more pictures. The other thing I was thinking is if I spread these borders a little bit farther apart, I maybe have a little bit more real estate. If you'll notice, this big stripe is behind both, so that would actually be the bottom of this and the top of this. But then there's another rectangle strip in there behind the banner, and I'm missing that element right now. Not that it's super important, because again, you don't have to copy the sketch exactly. You can make it what you want it to be. But I was just trying to see what it would look like. I don't really have another 2-inch strip. I have a 1-inch strip or 3-inch strip. But if I had another thing in there, I think I may do that. And again, my reasoning behind that is because if I add another strip in there, I can pull these a little farther apart, have that banner there, and have that strip in the middle. Or even I could just have this tag sticking out and bring that strip across, because that's going to give me a little more space to either not overlap these or overlap them but have less white noise above and below. And especially on this page, if I pull these up and down to about that same level, I can get these peekaboo shapes in here. And it just gives me more room to show this picture and also show these pictures. Or maybe I'll even put those out front or tuck one behind and put one out front. I feel like it gives me a lot more options. So that is the layout I'm going with. And I think that's how we're going to do it. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do in the center of the flowers yet, but this is how I lay out a sketch. Then once you've decided what you're going to do, then you can choose your papers and start cutting. So in the sketch, there's a pretty subtle pattern in here. Then there's the houndstooth pattern, which is a little more solid, a little darker and bolder. And then there's this stripe. So to stay kind of similar, first of all, I want to pull out and not use this yellow because I really want to save the yellow for my sunflowers. That said, I think I'm going to like a stripe for that background with both borders. I also think this brown, or one of them, is going to be the center to my flowers. So for the stripe, I'm kind of feeling like I might use the one with all the colors just to pull those colors together. I don't really want to use the green and white because it's butting right up against the green paper. I would rather use this for something maybe more in the center if I use it at all on this layout. The other option would be to use a print like this, or the trees, or the leaves. I feel like either the large leaves or the stripes would be good for my curvy borders. I actually think I'm going to go with the large leaf. I can't explain exactly why, but I just feel like I want a looser, more subtle pattern. And this just seems like a lot's going on in there. I may use that for one of the smaller borders. So we're going to do the large leaf. Now, if you've ever watched a Play to Create demo with Susan, what she does is she traces one border onto her paper. Like this. Then she traces the other border next to it. Instead of tracing, I said that wrong, she actually makes just a little pencil mark where she's going to make the cut with her paper trimmer. I find that I never line it quite right up and the little pencil mark bothers me. So I lay the borders together on my paper trimmer and see how big they are complete. Or I can lay them against my scrapbook mat down here with the measurements. Or keep a ruler out, whatever you like. So from the center where it's going to cut to the edge of my border, I've got about 3 7/8 inches. So I'm just going to line up my page right on that mark. And I make my cut. And then I just trace one of the halves and cut it. So I have both of my pieces and I know they're the right size. Now, you definitely could make the border shorter or longer as well, if you wanted more or less there. The thing to be careful is if you're running it from one page to the other like I am here and you want it to flow from one or the other, if you shorten or lengthen one, you want to account to shorten or lengthen the other by the same amount. So if I had added, say, 1/2 inch to this, I would want to line it up maybe 1/4 inch. So I get a quarter, see that gap there? So that I get 1/4 inch extra on each side, and they're still even as I bring them up across the page. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys, because I have absolutely made things bigger and not thought to look at that. And again, as you can see, I'm not exactly on the line everywhere. I'm a little hair off, and that's totally fine, because when you go to ink the edges, you are not going to see that. So as I cut pieces, I just kind of put them back where I wanted them. Or the other thing I will sometimes do, if I weren't taking a video with my phone, is I would take a snapshot when I have all the templates laid out of how I wanted it, so that as I cut pieces out, I don't forget where I wanted to put them. Because if you're anything like me, once you've had kids, your brain is kind of mushy, and sometimes you just don't remember what you had in your mind 5 minutes ago or even 30 seconds ago. I've got my husband running around downstairs making noise, and I got my dogs clicking around with her paws at my feet. So this is about 4 3/8 inches for these two borders. So I'm going to do the same thing there and make that cut. And what I'm doing here is I am cutting it the full 12-inch length of the page. And then if I decide to make it a little bit shorter and cut 1 inch or 2 off each side, I can kind of do that consistently. I may even paste the layers together and then kind of lop that edge off before I put this banner in there. These are the sides that goes together. So that was the way I wanted that one. So then I know that I want to use the yellow sheet for my sunflowers. I'm actually going to start with the biggest one first. Trying to do this in the screen for you guys rather than out of the screen, because my table space is wide but not very deep, and my phone setup only gets to the left hand half of my table, the way I have my clip to hold my phone for videos. So I'm just looking at what's on the back. So this is another thing to consider when you have this kind of thing on the back. Are you going to use any of these, and which ones are you going to use? Because if you are, you want to make sure not to make your shape over top of that, because you're going to cut it up. Personally, I'm thinking I kind of want to use this. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that piece out. Normally I would probably use a paper trimmer for a straight edge like this, but since it has other things bordering it, I think it'll work out fine. This Give Thanks is kind of cute, but I'm thinking I'll keep my stuff up here. So that kind of shows me what I've got to work with. I know the middle one won't fit over here, but it looks like the small one will. So we're going to go ahead and use that part of the page. Excuse me, I have a little tickle. A little tickle in my throat. And I had a lot of water today, unfortunately, because I've been working and my kids have been home because it's MEA and there's no school. So, yep, we're all good there. So I'm going to go ahead and trace the third sunflower on the yellow paper. Again, if you get slightly off, it's not a huge deal. I like to use a mechanical pencil because the lead's kind of thin and I feel like I have control and I don't have to worry about sharpening it. So when you cut out shapes, you're going to have the most control if you're cutting one piece at a time. So I'm going to kind of cut between these as well. And then you want to move the paper, not the scissors. With my borders, I'm kind of sloppy and move the scissors a lot more. But with my shapes, I'm decent about turning the paper. And again, it's okay when there's imperfection in your cuts. When you ink that, you're not going to see it, I promise. Almost done with that first sunflower. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video just so you don't need to watch me cut out the other two sunflowers because that just doesn't sound like fun for you. Alright, I've now cut all three of my sunflowers. Now I'm going to do the centers. And because I really want three different shapes of the scallop, I think I'm going to use a scallop punch instead of cutting this by hand, just so I get the exact same shape on all three. So I'm looking at this. This one's definitely too big. That's the 1.5 inch. If I look at the 1 inch, that's going to be too small. So I've got a 1 1/4. That is pretty close. So I think I'm going to use the 1 1/4 inch for the small sunflower. So I'm just going to punch that center out. So then I'm going to take that small sunflower. You can see through the template, just like with the photo sets, how small that center is and how much sunflower you can see around it. I'm going to use that same methodology to choose my center size for nature. So for tiny nature, I'm going up 1/4 inch, and I think that looks about right. So we're going to go with that. And that's going to be my center for the second sunflower. Then Over on this side, we have the larger size Nature Sunflower. So for that, I'm going to look at the 1 3/4 or maybe even the 2-inch. So there's the 1 3/4. I think that maybe shows a little more than I want around the edge. If I look at the 2-inch, that's a little better. I also have a 2 1/4. That's the biggest one. Let's take a look at that. So do we like that big center? Or do we like it to be a little bit smaller? Kind of leaning toward a little smaller. Although when you think of a real sunflower, I feel like you see mostly petals around the center, but I don't know. I'm going to cut them both out and see what I think. I can always toss a little scallop piece or use it for something else. So there's the bigger size. There's the smaller size. I really think I'm going to go with the smaller size. But just in case, I've got that one sitting right out here. So I'm just going to set my punches away for a second, because they take up a lot of space. I don't know about you guys. I have very few punches other than the circles and the scallop circles, but I really like these ones where you can use them and then they lock flat. So I have some of the We Are Memory Keepers and some of the EK tools. It just kind of depends which one was cheaper, but so far those are the two brands I have found that fold up that way to lay flat, because then when I am taking stuff to a scrapbook retreat or a crop day as well, I think it's a lot easier to transport because they lay flat, so you can easily pack them in a bag or a box, even though they are quite heavy. So here is my next thought. I feel like I want this bright orange. I think it's going to be it's definitely too busy to have in a journaling block. And I think it's going to be too busy for a photo mat. But I think it might make a nice banner. So we wanted to use 2-inch strips for that. I do not trace and cut the strips. I don't know if anyone else does or not. But I'm just going to go ahead and measure 2 inches on my paper trimmer. And then another 2 inches. The strips are really more just for visualizing and laying it out, not so much for cutting. So then I'm going to take one of these elements, guys, and you'll notice the arrow is just a little bit wider, but if I kind of line it up, right there, with a little bit hanging over each edge, so my peak here ends up kind of centered. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I just laid one on top of each other end to end because this is, because this is just a really simple cut. And I'm going to cut both together. Normally I would hesitate to do this because if I was cutting more of a shape into it, I'm afraid the papers would slide around too much on me. But this is just an edge and it doesn't need to be exact. So I'm going to pull out these strips and pull out my little triangle here and insert ribbon. And then the other thing I want to think through next is my journaling block, because I've already used up a couple of the papers and I need something that's subtle enough that I can journal on it, I can write on it. Now if I don't find it here, I could use, you know, maybe a tan or a taupe that kind of matches that from my mat stack or from a piece of cardstock. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if I don't find a paper in the coordinated pack. And I don't think I'm going to, because these are all kind of busy. So the choices are, instead of that shape, I use one of these pre-existing journaling block areas, or I really, really like this shape and want to use this shape. So I'm pulling out what I have in mat stacks to see color-wise if I have something that can kind of get me close. This is a lot lighter and more gray. That might not be too bad. It's a little dark. I feel like maybe that color or that color. I think definitely that color. That's a good option. That might match kind of closely. I'm going to pull out that lighter, creamier one too, just to see. I definitely don't want green. Those are all pretty bold and dark. That's greenish yellow. That orangey might not be bad. There's only one of those left. It's very close to this. So I don't know, what do you think? Should you do that for your journal color? Or that one? As much as I like the darker color, I think I'm going to go with a lighter color because that gives me more options for pen colors, and I can make sure that what I write on there is going to show up. I think I'm going to use the flat side too instead of the textured side. I don't know if you can't really see the difference on my phone, but one side's fairly smooth and one side is very textured, and I'm afraid that for writing, even writing in the lines and stuff on there, that the textured side might just not write quite as nicely and crisply on my page. So we're gonna cut that guy out. I feel like when I write text, I might use like a dark olive green, a dark orange, a burgundy, something like that, that really matches what's in my papers for the ink color for my text that I write. But I'm thinking of using that dark chocolate brown for the lines. So found 2 dark brown pens, and I'm just gonna scribble a little bit on here to see which one I like better with my paper colors. Definitely that top one is darker. So I use mostly Cricut pens and the Micron pens, and then I use Jelly Roll. I have some glitter pens and some white and sparkle. That just adds a little shimmer to things sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that over. I'm going to go ahead and trace in my lines. Now the new journaling templates that are coming out, the new set, I don't even remember what it's called. It's not Enchanted Expressions, maybe? They said the templates would be a little bit thicker, which will be nice because I find that this standard thing is a little flimsy sometimes when I'm writing. Now I didn't draw these arrows on here, and the reason for that is I wanted to see if I had something more fall-like a leaf in my doodle templates. I really don't. Could do an arrow. I could do the triangles. Could do those diamonds. I think we're going to stick with what's on the template because we know that fits exactly in the space we have. So I'm kind of relining this up with my lines that I traced. And I just trace around the outside, or rather inside edge of each one of these boxes. You could try to color it in. I mean, you could put like painter's tape or masking tape over the lines and actually use ink to fill it in. You could cut the pieces out of a different paper and stick them on here. But there is my journal template. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do for photo mats yet. Maybe since there were a few of these, I would even use this darker color for my mats. I might use white for my mats because frankly there's a lot of color going on here. And I personally find that some of the yellows and the greens and oranges and things aren't always flattering to the skin tone in a picture. So I feel like I'm going to want a photo mat. But I'm actually leaning toward like a white or cream colored photo mat. Where did my flower center disappeared on me there? For this tag, I feel, so I guess here's a question. I could take the scraps from that for the tag that sticks out there, because it's all by its lonesome here. Or I could use the brown from the flower center. That could be kind of fun. We'll see. The other thing is I wanted to get one more strip in there. Because that strip is going to tuck up behind this orange. Let me see what we've got left for papers in the kit that we haven't used. So we've got the owls. I don't really like that against the leaves. I don't think it is different enough. We've got the red dot. Or we have the red and white chevron, and I think that's a little bit too much as well. So I think we either go with the polka dot or we stick some of this brown damask back there, because the only place we have that is in our flower centers, none of which are touching this middle portion. I'm really torn. I think we're going to use the red because I really want to pull some red in, partially because it's my favorite color. And I feel like the orange, red, and yellow really bring in those fall colors with tree leaves changing and stuff. And then I think we're going to use the leftover damask for that tag. So I want, as I'm looking at that, it's not quite as deep as the ribbon. So I'm thinking like 1.5 inches because the 1-inch strip was too skinny. But we want it to be significantly smaller than the 2-inch strip. So I'm going to do a couple of 1.5 inch strips, one for each side. Now this tag, another thing I wanted to show you is if you have a really dark pattern like this, I feel like if I trace this in a pencil, I'm not going to see it really well. So I would trace it on the back. If it's an important shape, I would flip it over to make sure that you retain the exact shape you want on the front. Because this shape is completely symmetrical mirror image, it doesn't really matter which way I trace it. And because this has rounded corners, I'm just going to trace the rounded corner on here. But see how I line both sides up with the edge of the paper just so I would have less hand cutting. So that moved on me a little bit while I was tracing it, but not a lot, so it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm just going to go ahead . Cut those arches in there. Cut the rounded corners. So there's my tag. Oh, wrong pattern, wrong side. There's my tag that's going to stick out the side. So the first thing I kind of want to do is trim these borders. So first I'm going to bring this in a little farther from that. So I'm just going to mark on here where I want to cut that. And then I'm going to go ahead line them up end to end. This doesn't have to be exact. The most important thing for me right now is to make sure I have a square cut, because this is an exact strip. So those are going to line up on the edge like that. Then this is going to come in a little bit farther. So if I lay it in my measurements across the top, that's about 3/4 inch cut off. So as we look at these on each side, we probably want to cut off about 1 inch or 1.25 inches. That way. So I've got my borders cut that way, and then I'm going to cut 1.25 inches off this side. So there's kind of what I got going on. So I'm just going to pause this to ink my edges and stick it all down. I'm assuming that most of you have inked before, but if you haven't, Susan in her demos uses the fingertip daubers, which are great for starting out. I like this ink blender a little better because I feel like it's a little easier to control and I'm less likely to get it all over my hands. Although, believe me, I still manage. So let me find an example. So I don't know if you can see on here, but I definitely have some pencil lines going. You can still see my pencil line where I cut, but when I ink that edge, it kind of hides that pencil. Plus it gives it just an extra like darker border to offset and really pop off the color. See the difference with the inked edge over here and not being inked over here? Just watch how that, as I ink the edge, just kind of changes the look of that border. It just really makes it pop off the page, gives it a little bit more contrast and a little more separation between your layers, which I like. I originally thought I wouldn't like the inking look because I associated it with being distressed, and I'm just not a country farmhouse distress kind of girl. I'm a very modern, clean line, but I find that inking the edges gives me more of a clean line. Now, this edge of my border isn't going to show because this is going to be tucked up underneath the ribbon, so I'm not going to bother to ink that edge. If you're not sure, just ink all the sides. It doesn't hurt anything. It's not like it wastes a lot of product. This distress ink goes a long way. I'm using the Vintage Photo right now, but if you know an edge of something isn't going to show, I say don't waste your time. So I'm going to put you on pause again while I go ahead and ink this edges. And actually, I'm probably just going to stop the video here because all I have left is to cut my photo mats, which I'm probably just going to find like a nice cream for that, and stick my pieces down. So you've already kind of seen how it's going to lay out, and then I will post a picture of the finished product in the comments. So take a look, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear if this helped you at all, if it gave you any ideas, if you have more ideas for me, because I'm still kind of new at the video thing, but there's my sketch. I will post my sketch and my finished product in comparison, and you can see how I'm kind of following those shapes, following the basics of the sketch, but adding my own flair to it, adding some shape, doing some sunflowers instead of some circles, a caption block instead of a photo mat. You know, it's a similar layout. It's just an inspiration and it's a jumping off point. You can change as much or as little as you like when you're using a sketch. The great thing is you're making your layout and it's you. It should fit your personality. If you have pictures in mind, I like to choose shapes that maybe fit or match or complement the theme of my pictures. You know, if I have a birthday layout, I'm putting balloons or a party hat or a cupcake or whatnot on it. So anyway, I would love to hear what you think, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.